In this video, I'm gonna create a sample application using the 4-tier architecture. Select 1C project from the file menu under 1C items, give a name of the project and click OK. The solution files are now created, so the first layer, that is the presentation layer, is created. Next, I'm gonna create entity framework layer. I'm adding a new class library and giving a name EF. Actually, entity framework layer creates an abstract model of the entities called EDMX file, which has a collection of function imports and complex types. After creating, click OK. It actually makes the connection between Visual Studio and SQL Server. Now delete the class file, as in this layer we don't use class file and interface. The next step is to sign the layer with an assembly named 1C strong key, which is helpful for single sign-on in 1C environment. Click Signing tab in the left pane, mark Sign the assembly, browse to get the 1C strong key. 1C strong key is found in the presentation layer, which is already created. After signing it, save it and close. Upon next, I'm adding ADO.NET data entity model, which is the data store which has all the entities consist of complex types and function imports. Add new item under Visual C#, select ADO.NET data entity model. Give a name and click Add. Click Generate from the database and click New Connection. Then enter the server name which we have provided to you and select SQL authentication to authenticate your server with your team name and password. Actually, I'm using one of the team's database and right now it will be cleared. After that, select the name of the database and then click Test Connection. In this window, you must need to include some sensitive information to the connection string and give a name for the entities. Please note that the entity name is the object for the EF. Using this object, you can access methods of other layers. Select the items you want to import from DB. Precisely, you select tables and store procedures, as views and triggers are not allowed in 1C environment. Take a look at the diagram. It is a DB diagram which is imported to VS by your selection of tables and store procedures. It contains relationships, methods and other objects. Right click and click Model Browser to create complex types and function imports. Now there is a notable thing. In VS 2012, complex types and function imports are created automatically. However, if a store procedure returns only an integer value, the complex types are created manually. Here we have a function import called validateUser, as it returns an int value, so I am creating a complex type for it manually. If this step is confusing, delete all the function imports and complex types which are created automatically and create everything manually. Right click Store Procedures, add function imports, double click the function imports. In the window, click Get Column Information, give a name, and that's all. Complex type will be created. Actually, you may have this question: what is a complex type? It's simple. When a store procedure return an integer and a string and something else together on a single execution, all these results are stored as a complex variable. So VS 2012 understands that there is a complex string that a store procedure is returning, which is a mixture of integer, string, bit, float, etc. Hence the name. Now copy the connection string from app.config to web.config after you added the references. Save it. Now EF is over. Then next I'm gonna create DAL layer, data access layer. The DAL layer in your application is solely responsible for talking to the database for retrieving your business objects. DAL includes methods, namely create, read, update, call grub methods. Under Visual C# items, create a class library and name it as DAL. Then sign the layer with the assembly file named 1C strong key. Now 1C strong key is present as well as in EF layer as well as in presentation layer. After adding it successfully, rename the class file. A good practice is class file can be started with the letter C. Then add interfaces. Interface consists of abstract methods which indicate what a particular method is all about without much code. Create an interface prefixing with the word I. Now add references. References are added namely system.data.entity ef entityframework.dll. Now you can have a question like why references are added. Since we are building an independent project, it is necessary to add different references as each reference is a package consisting of inbuilt functions. So each reference does a particular thing which is written in the C# framework. For adding entityframework.dll, go to the EF layer, navigate under reference folder and find entity framework reference. So open the reference, copy the path and go to add reference window of DAL. Click the browse tab and paste the URL and select entityframework.dll. Now the same procedure I'm gonna repeat for other layers. The next layer is BLL, Business Logic Layer, which is responsible for all the business logics. Using this, you can customize the functionalities by writing different pieces of code for a single function. Same way, create a class library as you did for the other layers and give the name as BLL. Then go to properties and sign the assembly with 1C strong key. And also check whether it's in .NET Framework 4. Now rename the class file and then create interface. Now create references under Visual C# items. Now go to the reference folder and add references namely system.data.entity, EF, DAL and entityframework.dll. For adding entityframework.dll, you can just navigate through the browse tab in the recent objects which is found in the left pane and add references window and select entityframework.dll. all the layers are created, the next step is to write the code inside the class files. Now go to the presentation layer and check whether it's in .NET Framework version 4. It will be automatically signed with the 1C strong key since you have created the presentation layer first. Now for the success purpose, I am adding handlers folder. Now almost all the structure is over. It's time to write the code inside the class files. Since you know the procedures to write the code, I am just copying and pasting the code which I have in my local system. Now include all the references in the class file prefixing with the word using. For each layer we have added separate references, so you have to import those references inside the class file which you have created with the word prefixing use. Now I'm copying all the files code from my local system. The important functionality of using 4-tier architecture is for data serialization and for improved efficiency. This efficiency is achieved by JSON objects and by AJAX calls. Now the same way you have to import all the packages in the interface files. Now I want to say something about handlers. Talking about handlers, they implement high HTTP resource which dynamically return a value from the query string. The notable things in the handlers are context.request.queryString helps to retrieve the value of the variable in a HTTP query string. Then javascript.serialize changes the type of the JSON object to string and serialize and deserialize the data. It is necessary to import all the references in the class file with the word prefixing using. In talking about Ajax, Ajax consists of numerous functionalities named periodical refresh and timeout. Chat and all social network application uses this feature as the contents are loaded dynamically. Then unique URL. One of the notable features of Ajax application is that the calls to the server happen asynchronously, so the URL of the browser does not changes. To achieve this in the code, we have to set a value called hash. Ajax has a good feature called predictive fetch. It predicts the most likely information that the user will require and fetch it asynchronously before it needs it. If a user is reading a book and he's on a page for more than 20 seconds, this Ajax function says to the computer that this user is liking this page, so the next pages will be loaded automatically. In this way, the clicking of the pages are eliminated. You can find this predictive fetch in most of the YouTube loading videos as well as in many Amazon sites. Right now I am copying all the handlers folder and putting inside the code. Now I am adding the resources file. I have a local copy in my system. To complete it quickly, I am just adding the resources file as it is. Now you can see all the JS files, images, CSS are now included in the project. So I'm just building the code to check whether it's running perfectly or not. Actually now I got some errors in the handler. I think some spelling mistakes is over there. Just correcting it. Oops, I forgot to include the page. Now I'm just building to check whether it's working fine or not. Actually in terminal server, the directory browsing is disabled. So you have to set a page as in the beginning to execute a file. Again I'm just running. Yeah, the code is running now successfully. Yeah, now the application is created using the 4-tier architecture. Actually creating an application in 4-tier architecture is very simple when doing some normal coding. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching my video.